Hello and welcome to Kayla's World Preptober edition. My name is Kayla Canoe. I'm an author, YouTuber, gamer, and aerialist. And today's video is actually going to be the first video in my Preptober series because it is October season, NaNoWriMo just around the corner, so it is time to get prepared. And this first video is going to be all about character building. And to that end, I've actually created some character profile worksheets and character question worksheets that I will actually be going through today in this video. If you are interested in getting your own copy of these sheets, I do have them available over on Patreon. They are available for my $1 patrons, and yeah. So basically, any patron can get access to these printables that I'm going to be going through. If you guys don't already know, I also run a Preptober, I run a NaNoWriMo Discord server, and it's Preptober. So we have lots of Preptober events going on there. If you guys want to get in on that, where we do productivity sprints, productivity streams, and all that fun stuff, if you need help and support during your Preptober journeys, that is going to be linked below, so you can check that out. My Patreon is also going to be linked below if you're interested in these printables. But with that said, we're going to go ahead and get started with our character building. So the first thing that I'm going to go through is going to be more of the profile, which is kind of just like the generic profile. And I'm actually going to do this with one of my characters from my book, The Reckoning, which is out and available for you guys to purchase. That is also always linked below. But I'm just going to use the main character in that book, and I'm going to fill out this character profile for him, just so that you guys also have an example of how to fill it out. So when you're creating your character, the easiest thing I find is to kind of start with more of the physical details. So the things like that is we'll have name, age, birthday, gender, sexual orientation, race, or ethnicity. And for those of you who are fantasy authors, this could be a very exotic race. So for me, my character is a Deirdre, so that is definitely a unique race. I know his name, his age, his orientation. He's actually asexual. Well, he's more demisexual. He's on the ace-demi spectrum. So yeah, so those are kind of the things listed up top. And then also you'll want to know like their hair color, and what style is it? Do they have long hair? Do they have short hair? Do they generally style it a specific way? If so, you want to write that down. Eye color. For my character, he actually has changing eye color, so he has his normal black eyes and his red eyes, which is kind of an instrument of his magical usage. Skin color, there are varying skin colors. If you have magical races, they might have pink skin. You might want to write that down because you might forget that later. It's a detail about your specific races that you have. Body type, so instead of doing something super specific here, I'm thinking more like broad term. You could get into like super details and put down their height and their weight, but generically their body type, if they're if they're thin, if they're muscular, if they're athletic, you could do short, tall here, whatever identifiers you need for your character, you'll list those. Special abilities is kind of the category that I have put in there for us fantasy authors. So if there is magic in your world and your person can use a certain type of magic, you'll want to list that. For non-fantasy, special abilities could just be things that they're really good at that you want to list, things of note that are important to the story. And then any special features, so if there are scars on your character's face, if they have a birthmark, any kind of unique identifiers to them, you'll also want to write those down. The more detail and information you write down, and this is, I should add, for your main characters and probably your villain as well, because your villain is probably a main character. You'll want more detail because they're going to be throughout the story, and sometimes us authors forget these details If we don't write them down, I know I have. But anyway, so next you are going to go into kind of the more broad term things about their personality and who they are. So you kind of just start off with the body and the physical, and this is the person, and then you move into, okay, now let's learn a little bit more about who they are and what makes them them versus what they look like. So one thing you'll want to note is, what is their role in the story? Are they the protagonist? Are they the villain? You could even get into more detail of what is it that they're going to be doing in the story. You know, are they a mother? Are they a son? Are they, you know, the chosen one? You can add in your themes for your characters in this category as well if you would like to. You could also notate their character arc. Like if you have a specific character arc, be that positive, negative, or flat, you can notate that as well, just so that you have that. The next category we have, which I'll show you guys again, is wants and goals. So there is actually a difference between their goals and their wants and their needs. So the goals would kind of be like what your character is wanting to do or wanting to achieve. That goal / want is kind of the same thing, whereas their need might actually be something different, and that's kind of the whole story theme, character arc. Not going to go into a lot of detail about that in this specific video, but that information is what we're looking for here. And then you'll also want to write down their fears. What are they afraid of? Are they afraid of being abandoned? Are they afraid of being loved? Because you can be afraid of being loved. Just really whatever their greatest fear is, write that down. That's important. Again, that's going to tie into the theme and the character arc later on. I also put in a category for their beliefs / morals. And it's kind of more generic of, are they religious? Do they have a certain religion that they follow? If so, what is it that they believe in? And what is it that's like really important to them in that sense of, I don't believe in sex before marriage because I'm Catholic kind of thing. So those are the sort of things that we're looking to kind of write down in there. And as an example, so for my main character, Kai, he doesn't really believe in sex. Like, he just thinks it's a frivolous thing. So that's kind of like a belief of his, is that why do people have sex? Like that's his belief, is that there's no reason for sex. It's just kind of a messy thing that gets in the way and makes people act weird. So that is one of his beliefs. In addition to that, you also want to know your character's backstory, as in their history, where they come from, how they grew up, if anything traumatic happened to them that may have changed their point of view or their perspective. And this is all stuff that's happened prior to the current story, because obviously they're going to go through a lot of stuff in the current story, but just anything in the past, if they were abused, if they lost a parent at a young age, if, you know, disaster struck, like, I don't know, a hurricane, if they lived through like a hurricane or something like that, you might want to put that in there if that's something that like changed their outlook on life. You want to include that in the backstory so that you kind of know who your character is / was up until the start of your story. To get into a little bit more detail on internal conflict and like what's going more so on internally, get a little bit more specific on these characters. And again, this is stuff that you're going to do more so for like your main characters, not necessarily for all of your side pieces, but I would recommend doing the physical descriptions and the top part of the profile for all the side pieces, because otherwise you'll forget who they are. And another hot tip, have a list of names readily available for yourself, especially if you're like writing fantasy or something like that and you have exotic names for the different regions of your world. I literally just have lists for the different areas of the world or the different races. Mostly my races have different ways of which their names are created. Have lists of those so that way as you're writing you can like just pick one off the list and cross it off. Because a lot of times those little side supporting characters just like pop up as you're writing, and you don't have to have a lot of information, but it's a lot nicer to have a name pre-prepared versus being like character A, character B, and all that stuff. So hot tip, make a list of names that you can readily use for side pieces. Anyway, moving on, I have our internal questions form. It's nice and like Halloween-y themed because Preptober is October and I love Halloween and orange. So yeah, anyway. Internal questions. What is your character's misbelief about the world, or / this is actually referring to the lie that they tell themselves. And I talk about this a little bit in a previous video that I did. It was a character arcs video and what character arcs are. Basically, there's a lie that they believe, and then there's a truth that they learn throughout the story, and that kind of helps build into their arc. So this is kind of the place to write that down. What is that lie? What is it that they believe about the world that isn't necessarily true? I think, let's see, what is Kai's? Kai's misbelief about the world is, I wrote it down somewhere. I can't even think of it right now. I'm spacing. Oh, gosh, it's been one of those days, guys. His misbelief about the world is that emotions are weakness and that you should not give in to your emotions or have or display emotions. He misbelieves and thinks that emotions are weakness. He learns, though. Don't worry. Next question to ask about your characters. What is the worst thing in their life? The worst thing. The follow-up question to that is what is the best thing in their life. So we're kind of taking a snapshot of what they think is like the most terrible aspect of their life and what they think is the best aspect of their life. So for Kai, the worst aspect of his life would be the pressures set upon him by his father and never being able to make his father proud or happy. And the best thing in his life would be his friends, Harrison and Daniel, because they give him a little bit of freedom from the burdens of being a prince. So he kind of just gets to be more relaxed with them. Next question we have is, what do they most look down on about? What do they most look down on other people about? So what does your character look down on other people about? Example, that could be, it could be a physical thing. It could be they don't like people that aren't super intelligent. They look down on people for not being intelligent. Maybe they look down on people for not wearing nice clothing. Like they might look down on people who are in a lower class. I think Kai looks down on people for being sexually attracted to him. Like he doesn't like when people look at him with like love-struck eyes or like, you know, desire in their eyes. It like sickens him, so he kind of looks down on them for that. So yeah, just some examples of how to answer that question. The next one down here is, what is their passion? So what makes their heart flutter? What do they get excited about? What can they start doing and then all of a sudden all the hours in the day pass by? For Kai, I think that would be writing. Writing. That's like the one thing that he does that is like to himself, or really just like spending time with his friends, I would say could be considered a passion of his. And I think worship in the shrine might also be considered a passion of his, because time flies when you're praying to the goddess. Next, we have top 3 things they value most in life. Now, you could do material possessions for this, but we're trying to look more for internal conflict. So it's more of, what do they value most in life? Do they value honesty, integrity? Maybe they value family, family traditions, family love. Maybe they value one of their friends. Maybe that's one of the most valuable things in their life, is a friendship that they have. But those are kind of the things that we're looking for there. Next, we have what makes them feel loved, and who was the last person to make them feel that way. So, example for Kai is kind of almost non-existence. For him, it's almost like the opposite, where he doesn't feel loved by his family, and so he's like kind of searching for it and not realizing that he's searching for it because he's just like feels empty in that sense. So that's kind of what I would put down for that particular character. But for other people, it could be, the last time they felt loved was when they were with their, training with their father, and then he died, and so now they don't feel loved. Or maybe they do feel loved. Maybe they have a lover and they feel loved all the time. You can write that down. But that's just more internal questions to get to know your character as a person a little bit more, give them more context. Next, we're going to have some more like fun external questions. So these might be more like material things. So the first one is there an object that your character can't bear to part with, and why? So for Kai, as a sort of example, this doesn't always work super well for like fantasy, but he has a family ring that he doesn't want to part with, and that's because it's enchanted and he needs it. But yeah, so probably not a super great example, but maybe someone's got like a literal safety blanket that they just don't want to part with, or a necklace that they got from their mother who is now dead, so like they couldn't bear to part with that item. And so that's a bit of a what the item is, as well as why it's important to them and why they can't bear to part with it. Another question is, what is their favorite book, movie, band, etc.? Now, this again may not apply as well to us fantasy authors, but for contemporary people, that information can say a lot about a person. If you are more on the fantasy genre, this could be, their favorite weapon or their favorite type of music, if there's music. I mean, maybe there's like some folk songs or chants that they like. Maybe there's a story that they like. You can put that down there. Next, we have describe their typical attire top to bottom. So what does your character normally wear? Write it. And for these descriptions, you want to put down what's most interesting, as in what makes them stand out, what makes their outfit different from other people's, what is like their unique take on like style and what they wear. You could even add in like how important that is to them, whether or not they care. Like maybe they can't leave the house unless the hair is slicked to the side and they're, they got a little button-up jacket on and they look, nice and clean cut. Or maybe they're just like, screw it, I woke up like this, I rolled out of bed like this, and now I'm wearing a hoodie and we're going, That also can tell a lot about a person. So, write those kinds of things down. Next, we have describe their daily routine. And this is important for the beginning, especially for the beginning part of the story, because you want to know what your character's daily routine is and what's happening normally before you can then disrupt that routine and throw all this crazy stuff at them. So write that down, think about that, think about what their life looks like normally, because that makes it a lot easier to write those scenes where you mess it all up. Next, we have what is their weapon of choice, and this doesn't have to be a physical weapon. This could be something like, for Kai, I would say his weapon of choice is anger. His response to a lot of things is anger and defensive-ness. Some people use sarcasm, some people use jokes. And if you're a fantasy author and you want to go for an actual weapon, like this is their go-to. When crap goes down, they pull out their knife. That could also very much be their weapon of choice. But yeah. Next question is, what is your character's go-to cure for a bad day? And this is important to know just because you want to know how your character normally responds and how your character tries to change, their own negative feelings into positive ones. So if they're having a really bad day, maybe cuddling up to a nice book in front of the fire is what helps them cheer up. For my character, Kai, writing his stress down, writing his creative stories so that he can kind of be pulled out of his own reality and into his story worlds, helps him improve his day. So it's important to know this, because then when you really start beating up your character, because us authors are just evil and we're here to destroy our characters, you'll be able to see that conflict where it's like they don't have their bad day cure. You know, in the Reckoning, when everyone's in the woods, Kai doesn't have his stories. He doesn't have anything to write anything down with. There is no escape from the challenges that he's facing, and he doesn't have that coping mechanism anymore. So it's good to kind of know that. And then the last thing I have on the external questions list is, what nicknames do they have, or have they been called? Maybe there's like special people who refer to them by special names. Like Kai, most people call him Kai. His friends call him Kai. Otherwise, you know, Your Highness. Things like that. I think his father is probably more formal and calls him like Malachi. But yeah, just anything like that. If there's playful names, write down your playful names. It just kind of adds a little bit more depth to your character in that sense, especially if like they have that one friend who has a special nickname for them and only that one friend can call them that. That also says a lot about your character. Yeah, so that was a lot of information. I hope that these questions and this kind of profile building is helpful for you guys. If you have any questions on the stuff that I went through or anything like that, feel free to comment below. You can also hit me up in the NaNoWriMo Discord. There is a Preptober channel dedicated to Preptober stuff, so if you need help with character building, character prepping, and you want to throw a question my way, I am more than happy to answer those questions. And if you guys don't know, I actually did do a previous video. I did 2 previous videos. One is a little bit more information on how to create a character's backstory. So if you're looking for help with that, I'll link that video below. The other one is a video about character arcs and what they are. So if you need help understanding what a character arc is and kind of where to start with that, I do have that video. It will be linked below as well. And if you want more information on how to develop your character arcs, I am going to be doing a special video for my patrons that is dedicated to determining your character's arc, but also developing it throughout your outline and making sure that you hit all of those points to get your character from point A to point B. So yeah, be on the lookout for that. It is for patrons, so if you want to support my channel, hit me up over on Patreon. And I think that that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching this video, and stay tuned for our next video in the Preptober series. And I hope you enjoyed your time here in Kayla's world.